Good morning. Thank you for coming to the case studies. This session is going to be about emerging technologies, and my name is Jean Chu. I'm a PhD student in the Georgia Institute of Technology, and I'm going to present a project that students from Georgia Tech and Ryerson University have collaborated together under the guidance of Dr. Ali Mazalek and SynLab. My talk is going to be about grasping cultural heritage through using tangible interaction technologies to engage museum visitors with history and culture. Tangible interaction couples computational media with physical objects, and it enables people to use their gestures or expressive interactions for engaging with information. And tangible interaction supports learning, comprehension of cultural or historical concept, and collaborative activities. And I think it can be effectively used in engagement with cultural heritage. So we have designed an interactive piece for an exhibit called Mapping Place Africa Beyond Paper. The exhibition took place in the Robert C. Williams Museum of Papermaking in Atlanta, Georgia. And the exhibition contrasted the Western and the African notion of mapping practices and history. So the exhibition consisted of maps, which is a result of European cartography and a representation of geography on maps. And it contrasted with a Lukasa board, which you can see on the right corner. A Lukasa board is a mnemonic device that was used by Luba people in Central Africa. And it's a wooden tablet. It is a handheld wooden tablet studded with beads and carved ideograms. And the color of the beads or the shapes of the beads or organization of the beads held meaning of the history. However, only the creator of the bead would, or the specially trained members of the tribe would know what meaning it held and how to interpret it. So the symbolic meaning that beads held were open-ended, so it depended on who made this board. So we wanted to build a digital interactive Lukasa that helped museum visitors understand the symbolic meaning-making practices and think about how objects can hold memory. So we built this tabletop piece, and which museum visitors can tell stories of their families, friends, or neighborhoods by creating a story map by interacting with this tabletop. And the installation consists of a tabletop, multi-touch tabletop with tangible objects and a wall animation adjacent. And let me show you a short video clip of how it works. So placing the tangible shell on the tabletop shows a menu icon which represents generic story elements that can be told. And by dragging the virtual bead into the menu icon, a connection is formed and a user can assign meaning to the beads. And corresponding animation would be shown on a wall that kind of represent generic story elements. And the user can reconfigure or move around to kind of add more meaning or add more events to their stories. And when the users were done, they would lift the object up. And the tabletop is intended to be shared in groups, so the whole tabletop could share multiple people's stories, collective stories, and a wall animation would be used to help people share their stories with other people. And the configuration of the story map would be stored in a database so that other people could see. So this is the floor plan. So when the visitors enter into the gallery, they would first see the exhibition on maps, and on one corner there will be a Lukasa board exhibited, and after that there is an alcove which our interactive piece was installed. And this is how the alcove looked like. And behind the table, there was a television screen on the red wall, you can see here, which showed the previous visitors' story maps in an animation. So it was only the story map that was shown, not the wall animation. So the tangible objects, these are the tangible objects that was used. We 3D printed it, and the shapes of it were inspired by the Lukasa boards, which had shells and cowrie shells on it. And the tabletop was made with wood and carved with some patterns that could kind of give a similar look and feel as other African artifacts. We custom built the multi-touch tabletop, and we used open source softwares. So the exhibition went pretty successfully and people really enjoyed the interactive piece. However, we wanted to further understand how actually the interactive experience helps people understanding or how it prepares for learning. So we ran a user study. We invited 14 participants to the museum. We hired children in their age of 8 to 13, and we invited them to come into the museum in groups of 2 to 5. We gave them a lesson about a 10-minute lesson about Lukasa board, and we had them interact with the interactive tabletop. However, we kind of divided them into 2 groups. So one group would have the lesson first and then engage with the interactive tabletop. The other group would have the interaction first and then have a lesson second. And we compared them, and we did interviews, and we observed how people use the tabletop. And first thing we wanted to see was whether the interactive experience prepares students for learning, and we found that it did, and regardless of the order of the interaction or lesson, they were able to, the interactive experience prepared people for learning. And however, we wanted to also see whether the interactive experience itself supports sense making and understanding the concepts. And we have learned that people who learn about the Lukasa board first were able to apply their knowledge in their interactive experience. However, people who interacted first, if they didn't have any prior knowledge about what this is about or why this interaction is provided, they enjoyed the piece. They made stories, but instead of using like symbolic meaning making practices, they were just using the tabletop for pictorial representation. So people who learn about the Lukasa first were able to use colors to represent emotion or different groups of families. So they were using colors or different organizations for their own meaning making. However, that was not shown from students who interacted first. We also observed group interaction. So around the tabletop, the participants shared their stories. However, we noticed that in contrast to our expectations, people who interacted first were more collaboratively making stories together. However, people who learned about the Lukasa first, because they were so focused on applying their knowledge in their interactions, they were making their own stories rather than collectively making stories together. So that was interesting. Through this project, we have learned that it is possible to learn through sense making, and tangible interaction can provide opportunities to let visitors to perform and realize ideas behind cultural and historical practices through engaging with playful interactions. We also think that storytelling can be an effective way to create a dialogue for people to collaborate and share cultural values and ideas together. We also learned that when designing technology, it's important to make sure that the interaction aligns with the learning goals, and the interaction does not distract or does not get interpreted into unintended meanings. So through this project, we think that tangible interaction can be effectively used, and the openness helps people of the interaction, makes people participate, and also it helps people reflect on their meaning and share their stories together. This project was supported by many other institutions and was a collaborative project. And thank you. I would like to answer any questions.
Can you talk a little bit about your process for choosing how people would interact with the tabletop to make things? I mean, in terms of why did you choose to have physical pieces that would interact with it, and also just the interface of sort of dragging on those little circle icons?
Yeah. So looking at the Lukasa board, we worked closely with a curator of African Museum. So looking at the Lukasa board, we tried to think what is special about this Lukasa board. How is it different from other maps, or how is it different from our things? And we learned that it what was special was that the symbolic meaning making processes through like so the only the we thought that the process of adding meaning through the performance was important, so we wanted to enable that process. And also the tangible shells provided kind of a common interest, so it could be a token that kind of people could share together. And I think physical tokens always invite people to interact with it. So yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I was really interested when you said that you created your own multi-touch table using open source software, because my institution just dumped a small portion on free pieces. So can you talk a little bit about that? Did you have in-house people doing that? Why did you decide to go that way? What was your experience with that?
So I'm from Georgia Tech. So in Georgia Tech, there's a lot of techie people. So it's not so it's not such a difficult thing. And also, I guess buying a multi-touch tabletop is really expensive, and the budget is limited. And also, if you buy a multi-touch tabletop, they have their own software, so we cannot use. It's hard to kind of use it for our own purposes. So
Right,
yeah.
it's like you have to continue having them program it for you.
Yeah. And there's a lot of limitation that comes from theirs, but I think if we build our own, we can do whatever we want and have more openness. And yeah.
How long did the whole process take from like idea creation to actual implementation?
So I think the exhibition itself was like, I guess I only participated in the designing tabletop, and the idea of like contrasting the Western maps and Lukasa board. The exhibition itself took a while to kind of get that idea. So that part, I guess, took like maybe 1 or 2 years or more. I'm not sure. But then for building this tabletop, it took a year, and like ideation took like 6 months, and then building it actually took a year.
Did you do user evaluations or testing as you were before you started building the tabletop, or did you only do it after the fact?
So while we were building the tabletop, we did evaluation, but it was more focused on the usability. Like, do people understand what to do? Like, are they able to do it? And then the evaluation that we did after building it was more about learning. Like, do people apply their knowledge? Do the people connect it with the Lukasa board? Yeah.
So what was the open source software that you used?
So for the sensing of the tracking of the multi-touch interaction, we use CCV, Community Core Vision, and Reactive Vision. And for tying everything together, we use a game engine called Unity 3D. Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, so hi everybody. Sorry about that. So, hi everybody. My name is Jennifer, and I'm very glad to be here today. So first of all, I would like to thank the MCM team to let me present to you today the Bruegel Box, an immersive art project by the Royal Museum of Fine Arts of Belgium. This project is a concretization of a deep reflection on the changes taking place in the field of museology, including the issue of the temporary exhibition. Let me explain myself. The Old Master Department of the museum houses the second largest collection of Bruegel the Elder in the old world. The first one is at the Kunsthistorische Museum of Vienna. Bruegel is a famous Flemish painter, but the last big exhibition, which was a great success, a public success, as you can see, has occurred in 1918, so more than 30 years ago. However, it is impossible for us to organize and to hold a major retrospective of the Flemish artist for two reasons: the high insurance cost and the fragility of the pieces of art. Most of the paintings are on wood panels, which fear any change in temperature and humidity. Unfortunately, this is not only the case for Bruegel. It's becoming the same issue for all the ancient art and for some of the works of modern art which age badly. This reality questions the very practice of temporary exhibitions. Starting from this observation, the question is simple. How do we continue spreading our cultural heritage without endangering the works themselves? How technology, with all the recent developments, can provide an acceptable and viable alternative to temporary exhibitions? In other words, how can we put technology at the service of art and not the contrary? For us, the key words are immersive experience based on content. Those two words are the origin of this project. Thanks to the support of ENGIE, a French energy company, we could develop the Bruegel box, which highlights the fall of the rebel angels. That has been the subject of a recent scientific publication. In her book, the author, Tin Megang, explains the fall of the rebel angels, who, in the fall into hell, become hybrid monsters. And she demonstrates that, contrary to some popular belief, Bruegel is not an artist who only describes the popular life. In fact, he's very erudite, and he's aware of all the most recent discoveries from the very new world. To prove it, she dissects each element of the compositions, and she finds the sources of inspiration of the painter in contemporary studies of this new world. Some sources are highly serious, others are more extravagant, with, for example, this unicorn. So how will the Bruegel box look like? Concretely, in a dedicated room of the museum, there will be an installation of high-performance projectors. From the ground to the ceiling, short HD animation will be displayed on the walls, 3 and 4. This immersive projection will introduce the key work, and in the future, others emblematic masterpieces of our collection or from museum abroad. Here you can see a simulation of the projection. The script will translate the publication and will allow us at the same time to make accessible to a wider audience the latest states of the scientific research. This device will allow the visitor to truly enter into the painting and the phantasmagorical world of Bruegel. He will dive at the heart of the composition, and he will follow the rebel angels into the fall, beyond the limits of the frame. After the immersive experience, we bring back the visitor to the original art piece, thanks to a mobile application that will guide the visitor through the museum to the original work. Links with other works of our collections by the same artist or on similar theme will complete this visit. If for this painting the animation is rather narrative, we already can imagine the possibilities that this display can provide for other kinds of work. We could, for example, explore the successive layer. We could explore in successive layers the color theory of the French apprentice Georges Seurat. Or we can decompose or accelerate the movement in the Italian futurist. or even deconstruct the shape by the light in the impressionist landscapes. But as you can imagine, during the preparations of this project, we met a lot of difficulties. The worst were that first, we couldn't choose our own partners, whether for production or for the technical parts. Unfortunately, they were not always the best positioned to understand truly what is actually at stakes for a museum. And secondly, the challenge between the vision of the conservators and a vision that is maybe more progressive. It is still hard to convince the conservator that this kind of project is not only entertainment. But as I said, this project is the concretization of a deep reflection on the changes taking place in the field of museology. Museums no longer look like this, or even like this. Or does it? I don't know. It's just I like the picture. I couldn't resist. In this digital age, this kind of projects enable us to explore new possibilities. It facilitates the access of art when physical transportation becomes increasingly binding. It allows us to expand the museum experience and the meeting. Sorry about that. So it allows us to expand the museum experience and the meeting with the art pieces by exporting the project abroad when the work itself can't be loaned overseas anymore. But at the same time, it raises questions on the future of museums, and we will be glad if this can open up a debate. Is it this the future of the temporary exhibition? Will technology offer an alternative to broadcast our collection and enable museums to stay economically sustainable? Will future generations still be more likely to visit museums if we only can display digital or 3D printed duplicated masterpieces in order to protect our cultural patrimony? In conclusion, at the digital era, we are witnessing a real paradigm shift. Through this project, we try to transport the classical museum experience in an immersive experience. And we want to operate a new dialogue in the museum space where technology is at the service of art. But at the same time, this kind of project raises a series of ethical questions, and we don't have the time here to talk about them all, but I'm ready to answer your question if you have any, and we can discuss during the break. So before finishing, one note on the launch date. It isn't decided yet because we've just been joined by a new partner. So the collaboration isn't yet official. So I can't tell you more about it, even if this is very frustrating. But what I can tell you is that the Bruegel box will be open before the end of next January, hopefully. And if you own some Bruegel in your own institution, you'll probably hear about me again. So thank you for your attention. And follow the project with the hashtag BruegelBox. Thank you. Yes?
So something that struck me is that you talk about following the composition outside of the frame. Are you creating new aspects?
No, this was a really hard debate with our scientific department. We weren't allowed by them to recreate some aspects that weren't painted by the painter itself. So it's more 2D animations.
Using different elements from the painting.
Exactly. Actually, we compare, if you can, as you can see here, the author tried to identify different sources of the painter, and she tried to make some comparison between the sources and the original art. So we are doing some animation with this. Yes?
I wasn't clear whether or not there was sort of interactive component to this, whether or not the user had any ability to...
No, at this point, there is no interactivity yet. The new partner is the reason why we have this new partner. We really want to make it interactive. But in Belgium, it's really hard to have interactive displayed like this one because we are a multilingual country. So we always have to deal with this question. So, any other question? Great, thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Hello, everybody. Just so you know, SCED on your phone, on every individual session, everywhere in the conference, there's a little feedback button. So you can give people feedback at the session level. We're trying to let people know that they have that opportunity. There will be a post-conference global feedback, but if you can help people on the session level, go to the SCED on your phone. It would really help out. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Well, wonderful to follow two such interesting presentations. I want to think about those more. I don't want to give a presentation, but I'm here, and I do want to present today. My name is Larissa Bailiff. I'm from New York, and I work for a small arts education virtual reality content company called Wolfbert VR. Really long title there. Our Wolfbert team is a group of professional curators and educators, I'm an educator myself, who are deeply committed to partnering with museums and cultural heritage sites to develop arts-based educational experiences, which can be shared through virtual reality. Each experience that we make is meant to engage the user, students, teachers, and in fact, general audiences, and teach through original curriculum and our carefully curated storytelling. And our intent is really to reach audiences around the world who would otherwise never have access to such experiences due to geographic, economic, or personal circumstance. So we all want students to be here, right? In the museums, experiencing art, science, natural history. But sometimes this isn't possible, right? And all of you here are all too familiar with the reasons why that students can't make it to the museum, the actual site, right? All of those reasons equal no trip. Okay, a little overdetermined, kind of like your museum slide, but not too far off, right? This black and white picture from the 1960s. Maybe this is more like what the classroom looks like today. And this looks like a great teacher. He's really engaging, but why is he using a poster of a Rosenquist, when he could take these students to the museum? We'd like him to get to the museum, or at least transport his students there another way to really feel immersed. So this case study has to do with a trip that we made at the end of the school year, at the end of May, to Episcopal Academy outside of Philadelphia. So there's the campus. But before I talk to you about the actual experience, I want to ask, how many people have been to this museum? Okay, a fair number have been to the DeYoung Museum in San Francisco. It's a great museum. You all should be there. You all should go in person, right? I come from California, from the Bay Area, so I'm really proud of the DeYoung. They have a great collection. But it's not always possible, right? So we wanted to offer this experience to the students in Philadelphia. And we built an experience, we scanned, and we were able to drop it into the headsets and bring it. And in fact, I need to say that none of the students at Episcopal Academy had ever been to the DeYoung Museum. But after our experience, they were all excited, and every single one of them and the teachers wanted to go there. And there they are. Okay. We'll talk more about that in a minute. So We were invited to the school by two different teachers. One of them is there. We had an art teacher and an art history and world history teacher, and we spoke with them, Rob and Dave, and talked to them about bringing a sort of modified curriculum that we had worked on based on the de Young galleries. A little bit of American late 19th century history, a little art history, and we all agreed that we could do this for 2 class sessions of about 40 minutes each, with different groups of students, juniors and high school seniors. The first class had 15 students, the second had 9. So there we are. That gives you a little still shot of Gallery 26 with some gorgeous Hudson River schools. And in fact, the Wolfbird experience encompasses 3 different American art galleries at the de Young. And they're Hudson River School and some tonalist landscape painting and Trompe-l'oeil, as you can see there. The students at Episcopal Academy were pretty advanced, and they were familiar with a number of different technologies like SketchUp modeling, Minecraft, Second Life, Google Cultural Institute, but not one of them had used VR before, so this was really exciting for us. And we dropped them into the headsets. And gave them a little brief tutorial about San Francisco and the de Young, and then let them navigate. And I'm not going to drop you all into the headsets, but I figured we'd give you a little taste of what they experienced. So we're going to turn on the video. So you're going to be dropped into Gallery 26, essentially. Headsets on. So we all went around Delilah. And I'm going to show you one more. Whoa. Okay, I'll tell you a little bit more about that in a minute. That's a Martin Johnson Heath, some of you might recognize. So in fact, in the shot I showed you, or the more pictures that I'll show you of the experience, the technology has already changed since that. So we're no longer using the hand-controlled component at all. But even though we zipped very fast through there, and students could slow down and experience it, in a slower way than that. That is the experience. You're moving through the galleries. It is user-controlled. So we let them sort of play around in there, if you will, and check out the different images. And in particular, we had sort of put in that highlight experience of that hummingbird. So a sort of special effect, but a special effect that is not unrelated to the painting. Martin Johnson Head was traveling through South America and was studying and doing careful research on the hummingbirds and the orchids and the flora and fauna that he was experiencing. So we sort of buried that in there and allowed the students to find it and sort of have an educational, immersive experience without even knowing it. And of course, you could tell when they found it because they would yell out and point each other to it. So we wanted to see how that would work, and it worked really, really well. I put this in, again, another sort of still experience, this screenshot of a particular painting. So eventually we told them they all had to gather, and we gathered in the Gallery 25, the Trompe-l'oeil, or still life section, and had them gather around this particular William Keane, Old Man Joe, and that's where we really got down to business and had them analyze it and do close looking. They could zoom in and out, and we talked about it. And then we let them look around the gallery a little bit more and discuss images that they were drawn to and discuss them with one another. So basically that was what we did with them in terms of actually being in the experience. And then we wanted to break it down and have them talk to us about both the new technology, this way of learning, and their actual experience of the de Young Museum. So there they are. And of course, we asked them a number of questions, even more than this, but and we also asked for them to just tell us anything that they felt about the VR and using it in the classroom. But these are some of the things that we hit upon. What did you find most interesting? What did you most enjoy? Whether it was the hummingbird or being able to zoom in, being able to navigate yourself, et cetera. How would this compare to being in an actual museum gallery? And all of these students had been to some museum or another, some of them many. What would you do to make this experience more interesting? And we'll let you know some of the results. What kind of museums would you like to visit? etc. So there they are. And they didn't hold back. By the way, these are images of teachers. And word got around, and so we didn't just have the two teachers we were working with, but we had the principal of the school and a lot of them coming in and during our session and afterwards and talking with us about what they were interested in. So, in fact, I'll tell you, what do teachers want? What do teachers want out of this? Well, maybe some of this is to be expected. They want experiences that relate to the core curriculum, right? They want it to be easy and flexible and to be used. They don't want to have to try to justify it with their principles. They want multiple experiences so that this can become a part of the regularized teaching practice, right? Not just one-offs, but a way that they can drop into these different experiences, use them for history classes, for instance, throughout the different grades. And they wanted assignments tied to experiences. So tasks for the students, students being able to go in and, for instance, pick 3 paintings that have to do with authority. Interestingly, this is something that students seem to want as well. Perhaps not that particular assignment, but they were very interested in having tasks. Student feedback, and I'm not going to read all of these, but they did love it. Very positive about the VR experience. They felt very present in the museum, and they really enjoyed that. Scale, size, dimension, space really came across, so they felt they were approaching installations. They felt they were in an actual museum. And it has the benefit of not just seeing something on a screen like we're doing today, so they could really tell that this painting was bigger than that one. And again, they could get up really close and zoom in. And they were excited to move around the sculpture. So we moved around Delilah very quickly, but to be able to go around and look at three-dimensional objects from different angles. They especially loved the user control element and being able to go wherever they wanted to, stop at a particular painting and direct their friends to it. And all of them said that they were inspired to visit the De Young after the VR preview. What do students want? They want avatars. They want scavenger hunts. But they didn't say that those couldn't be educational. They said they wanted tasks. They wanted things to do in the galleries. They wanted it tied with a certain sense of independence. They wanted to sketch. They wanted to make their own object galleries in VR. And they loved the immersive effect of the hummingbird, and they wanted more. They wanted the water to move. They wanted sounds. They wanted all kinds of different effects that made them feel more into the painting, but also the experience and perhaps a sense of history. They all wanted Egyptian, Roman, and Greek statues. They loved the idea that we could capture objects, and they wanted to go back to antiquity in this way. And they were also very interested in the sort of notion of ambulation and how this could relate to architectural experiences, mazes, and gardens. Not necessarily gamified, just the idea that you're walking in a space. Why not kind of amplify that in the actual experience? Overall takeaway and surprises perhaps for us, or sort of recapping, they all loved it. Self-navigation increased the level of curiosity. And by that, I mean they just dove right into it, and they wanted to go up to the paintings and study them. And for our experience, we provide a wall label. There's also audio content that's narrated by either a curator or, for instance, our Coral Told experience is narrated by author-illustrator Neil Gaiman with his lovely British accent, and that's a lot of fun. And so you can listen to that or not listen to it as you choose. But we really believe in the layering of the immersion. But again, students really wanted this independence and this ability to choose. Teachers had many, many ideas about how they could use this experience, many good ideas, many interesting ideas, many ideas that gave us food for thought. And I think we were kind of a little overwhelmed, and wonderfully so, that they thought, they wanted to tell us right away how we could work this in. And I think most touching to us, and this is something that's come up in a lot of articles about VR and new technology in the classroom, is that students wanted to help each other with this new technology. They instantly bonded, and if somebody didn't get it, before we could rush over and show them how to do things, I'm going like this because now we have the touch tap, but use their controls, another student was helping them out. And that, as a mom and a teacher, really excited me as an educator. And this VR experience really fostered interaction and bonding between the students. They wanted to help. It wasn't about the right answer or this or that. They wanted to show each other the hummingbird and the exciting things. So my time is probably nearing an end. But I just wanted to say, of course, since this trip, we've done some, informal focus groups, and we've been working a great deal on a number of builds of museums that we've scanned, but continuing to sort of think about the things that we've learned and looking forward to going out to more schools in the spring. But the case study today that we've looked at, we've been talking about transporting students to San Francisco to see the De Young Museum in this 19th century American art collection. I just wanted to take us to a different realm and a different museum in California. These are photo shots of a scan and build that we created of the gorgeous Mesoamerican collection, which spans, centuries and thousands of years, and has these wonderful, wonderful objects that you see here. And one of the most special aspects of this particular installation, who's been here? Okay, see, a few of you. Now the hands are coming up. But, it's absolutely fantastic. And one of the most special aspects of the installation is that the whole environment, of course, has been designed by the contemporary artist Jorge Pardo. So from the colors that are chosen, and I'm sorry, this slide doesn't do it justice, but you can see the plinths, and so we tried to capture all of that in the VR, the lights. I mean, just all of it is a really incredible dialogue between these objects and the way they've been installed. And it's one of the most frequently used teaching galleries at LACMA. It's really important, and again, there's centuries of culture there, but not everybody can get there in person. Whether they're a student, family, other individual. But with WIFBERT VR, many more people can have access to this and experience it. And just to sort of leave you with the thought of a VR expert at Stanford University, Jeremy Balancin, he talks about in his research and writing the idea that immersive experiences can create a much deeper sense of connection, memory, and empathy than some other types of 2D learning experiences. And so something to sort of think about, why one would want to be immersed in an experience like this. So, before I get kicked off, we hope that if you haven't come by our booth, that we can drop you into the headsets and take you to London for a very, very different experience of Impressionist and Post-Impressionist works. But whether you come by our booth or not, I'm happy to entertain your questions now or your comments or suggestions. We are open, we are interested, we are new, and we are very excited about this kind of new technology, and we hope that also it gives you lots of ideas for either utilizing this in your institutions, thinking about how VR might connect and create outreach, but also how it might create very interesting aspects within your museums and institutions as well. So, thank you. I'm sorry, I'm not. So, yes, ma'am.
Thanks for a great talk.
Thank you.
I was wondering, you had that fantastic photograph of the teacher with the poster and the painting and
Yes.
the students around it.
Yes.
And I think it exemplified really well the kind of social dimension of a group trip to a museum.
Yeah.
Because going to a museum as part of a school group
Yeah.
is not the very same thing as going to a museum on your own or even
Yes.
with, small. So there is an element of dialogue, there is an element of people showing other people things and the teacher kind of mediating between the students and what's around them in the walls. So in the experience with the VR,
Yes.
did you see that the teachers had to devise new strategies to actually supply that to some extent? Because the students, I guess the students weren't seeing the very same thing, of course, because they were free through the headsets to navigate the space the way they wanted. So it was very individual experience, I guess. So the first question is whether you noticed that the teachers were trying to supply that. And the second question is whether you think that could be a direction to develop, maybe in collaboration with the teachers.
Yes, all good points, observations, and sort of question. So trying to sort of unpack that a little bit. I totally agree, and I think that the museum experience is for many different reasons, and the socialization and the interaction and discussion is one of the most important things about school in general. So we don't want to lose any part of that. So I led the discussion, and David Siegel joined in because he knew his students better. And we gave them an object list, and gave them a little test run of the experience, and we talked about it in advance, and agreed that I would sort of lead it, and he would jump in, and he did. And so we did a sort of collaborative, team teaching, which I loved, and so that we had a discussion with the students. In terms of their own experience, we let them kind of be on their own, and then we called them together. So they were viewing the same experience, they were sitting next to each other, and we could hear their comments and they could hear each other's comments. There are different ways to run it, but the idea is to create a social space, whether it's in that's not the only idea, but it is an idea to create a social space, whether it's in a classroom or, for instance, if you have friends around the world and you want to experience the same thing and sort of discuss it, that's an option as well, because, we love the idea of this for schools, but we also know that this is a great thing for, or potential for, lifelong learners, friends, families, individuals, and we don't want to have people just go into the headset and go into their own world. We do. It was very interesting, I think, to see how much they wanted their own kind of tasks, but that didn't mean they couldn't do it in group. Let's go find, here you go into a group, let's go find 3 images and debate. Get together afterwards and discuss it. Absolutely. And interestingly, when we went out to the De Young, before we even scanned, I led a museum, they know this. I actually corralled a school group and started asking them about works in this room to see how it would work. And we really want it to be as close to, whatever the teacher wants to do, but an actual museum education experience trip. Yeah. Oh, I'm in time. Okay, one more question. So sorry.
This is a comment that might lead to a question.
Okay.
It seems to me that all 3 of you are really onto something here, of making things that are either that are inaccessible either because of distance or inaccessible because of restrictions, in Jennifer's case, visible to people. It seems to me that there's an incredible depth there, in particular in Jennifer's area, where she probably has a million objects or so that she would like to make accessible, like to talk about, like to have an experience with, but can't. In your case, you're bringing things to people that are there, but you're not there with them, but they're still there. I think if you take a look at all of our organizations here, the amount of stuff that is hidden is enormously bigger than the amount of stuff that we're able to show them. And so my question to you would be, how are you thinking about beginning to address that? I know it's a huge issue.
That could be for you as well.
I'm not sure I understand perfectly the question.
I think he's saying that that one of the things that bridges our discussion is this idea to bring things to the public. Even within the museum itself, for conservation reasons, either also deepening the experience, perhaps. But how many Bruegels are out there that people will never see together, or never, So I think in some ways we're working towards the same thing, which is pulling out the sort of secret treasures, or even just more out of storage than people get the chance to experience.
Or the idea of virtual exhibition.
The idea of virtual, or archiving and documenting as well. It kind of goes different.
So just in the case of my institution, which is the Center for Creative Photography, you could go there and, as a researcher, look at all this stuff by Gary Winogrand.
Yeah.
But you have to physically go there.
Yeah.
And by the way, the archivist really doesn't even want you to look at some of this stuff.
That's a whole nother topic. No, that varies by institution.
If I may, indeed, we want to make our collection accessible online, but most of all, we want people to come in our institution, and this is very important for us. And maybe I wasn't clear enough about that specific point, and we are developing this with our new partner, and I'm not allowed to talk about it, but we really want to kind of organize a confrontation between the digital experience and the original the experience with the original piece of art. And what is wonderful with this case is that the visitor will be able to see some details that aren't that isn't possible to see directly on the painting. So that's plus-value, we say in French. It gives something more, and that's very important for us. But we really want the visitor to come inside the institution. So we are trying to recreate a kind of aura of the masterpieces so they can.
You won me over. I'm going to go. But just to say, yes, we are thinking a lot about archiving and presenting and all of that, and one can do that online. But this might also draw people in, archivists aside, or making them happy. Thank you all so much for coming.
Thank you.